Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
Fulfillment demand continues to skyrocket and outpace available labor. To keep up, warehouse operators are turning to flexible fulfillment solutions like 6 River Systems. Utilizing 6 River Systems' award-winning combination of collaborative robots, artificial intelligence, and operational expertise will make your associates and wall-to-wall fulfillment workflow more efficient. No new infrastructure, no change to warehouse layout, easy to deploy and scale, easy to train and retain associates, all at half the cost of traditional automation. Want to take your fulfillment operation to the next level? Go to www.6river.com to learn more. That's www.6river.com to learn more.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. On today's episode, I am going to be joined by James Bell, who is the CEO at Viking Cold Solutions. And Viking Cold Solutions is an energy management company. They focus on cold storage systems and making those cold storage systems more efficient, more sustainable, and operate better overall. I will admittedly say that I am a warehouse guy, I have a warehouse background, but I have not experienced working in a cold operation before. So I'm going to be learning along with the audience today about Cold Solutions and how that all works. And James is going to talk to us about that and also about how digitization comes into play when we look at Cold Solutions in the warehouse. So, James, welcome to the show. How are you?
Very well. Thank you for having me today, Kevin.
Yeah, happy to have you on. As I just mentioned, I don't have any experience with working in cold storage and things of that nature. I definitely have a lot of experience in the warehouse, but never on that side. Always kind of wanted to stay a little warm, I guess. But so I'm happy to have you on and learn a little bit more. Why don't you give us a little overview? What is Viking Cold Solutions in your words, and what do you guys do?
Sure. Viking Cold Solutions has thermal energy storage technology, which specifically stores energy inside of any type of cold storage facility, primarily low temperature. So we add efficiency and we add resiliency and quality and allow cold storage operators to reduce their energy spend, better manage their energy intensity, reduce their carbon footprint, increase sustainability efforts. And we do this across things like grocery stores, cold storage warehouses, and restaurants and fast food.
Interesting. So now tell us a little bit about, before we get into talking about the digitization of this industry, tell us a little bit about cold storage in general versus a regular warehouse. Like I said, I've never experienced it firsthand, have some familiarity with it, but what are some of the nuances of cold storage versus a regular warehouse, regular storage setup?
Certainly. Well, the most obvious is that cold storage is considered temperature-controlled space. And that can include low temperature, which is frozen, or medium temp, which is your chilled or cooled space. And obviously the type of foods that are in both of those are ubiquitous across the food chain. And so the cold chain extends kind of farm to fork, and it's anything that requires temperature control. And it's much more energy intensive than a normal warehouse. So the most clear targets of a group like that are obviously maintaining strict temperatures for food quality and food safety. And then, of course, there's traceability, and there's the traditional logistics challenges of getting foods from the farm to the fork in a timely fashion.
Definitely, yeah. And I think, there's all these other, I guess, things too about certain equipment that can be used in there as well. But definitely, I think there's some other levels of complexity, and as you mentioned about, making sure that things are traceable, and also, we're dealing with food oftentimes when we talk about cold storage. So obviously, there's a spoilage factor there in play as well. So what kind of additional levels of complexity would you say there is within cold storage versus, just a regular warehouse?
Certainly. Though, obviously the complexity of anything that maintains temperature and has perishable goods in it, whether that's food or things that are really torn out of the headlines of today, like vaccines or pharmaceutical, are number one, safety, and then, of course, quality. And then the normal laws of supply and demand kind of come into play, meaning, there's been a high demand for food, and particularly refrigerated and frozen food during the pandemic. So that's kind of pulled the supply and demand out of balance, particularly in the warehouse world, which I think is the area we're talking about today. There's been an incredibly high demand for cold storage warehousing that's outstripped the supply. So in order to keep up with that, both the logistics providers, which are big 3PLs, and the retailers have really been struggling to keep up with the need to feed people and feed people safely. And what comes along with that are energy intensity, refrigeration equipment, contingency planning and backup for things like loss of power, that refrigeration. And then all of this is driving adoption of technology to both, preserve the food, reduce the energy intensity, and better track and trace that food through the cold chain.
Definitely. Yeah. And you mentioned there, interesting point, I guess, of what's going on is the supply of cold storage is being outstripped. So, what, I guess, and it's not as easy to, find and just simply put together some temporary cold storage, right? There's a lot more that goes into it. So what are some of the things, and I guess, some of the things that Viking can help with in terms of, ramping up the amount of cold storage space, and how can you help, companies expand their footprint in the cold storage?
Certainly. Well, we work with both existing facilities in a retrofit standpoint, and we work with a lot of new builds. And we're seeing a great deal of new building. Almost everyone in the industry is building right now because of the demand and the growth that the industry's seen. And a lot of them are adapting the latest cutting edge technologies like ours. And one major part of what we do is digitize the facility and kind of make a digital twin of it, which is a little bit one of the themes that's resonant in a lot of warehouses. That sounds like either the industrial Internet of Things, Industry 4.0 is a word for it. Everybody talks about big data, AI, machine learning. But when the rubber hits the road, what this means in warehouse facilities, either dry like you talk about, or in the refrigerated ones, like we're kind of focused on today, are a use of warehouse management systems, a use of mobile technology, and sometimes wearables, robotic systems and automated systems for managing the inventory. And then when it comes directly to the refrigerated and cold storage systems to track and trace the goods from farm to table. And then there's, layered things like artificial intelligence and analytics that come right behind that, can give you actionable intelligence. So what we do specifically is we use the digital information that we produce and we get from installing our technology to improve the operations of these facilities, make them more efficient, make them less energy intensive, and we can actually turn them into an energy storage asset where they're able to use their energy in a way to even lower their OPEX, but also sometimes even become a profit center. Interesting.
That's very interesting. So now the digitization, right? So we talk a lot about, and obviously a lot of the things that you've talked about, like AI and big data and Industry 4.0, we've talked about on the show with other guests as well. And it's the big thing and the push forward into coming into the new age, I guess, of warehousing and storage and distribution centers and fulfillment centers, whatever you want to call them. But with the cold storage, you mentioned in there, using wearables and using robotics as well. within this new digitization phase and transforming things in that nature. So how does that work with cold storage? Because obviously the equipment needs to be able to perform in more extreme conditions, right?
Yeah, it's a good point, and you've identified the challenges that come along, and that is part of the complexity. Mm-hmm. Is some of the normal things, like you can't use some robots that run on, say, things like normal batteries, because obviously in low temperature cold storage, those won't work nearly as well. And inside of large cold storage facilities, you generally have to have hardwired equipment. Mm-hmm. So those challenges have been around for a while. I mean, obviously the cold storage industry has been around for, well over 100 years, but it's only just here in the 21st century that it's really kind of being brought forward into the digital age. And what really matters to a lot of these folks is the data that they're being able to collect and that our sensors can collect, which is not only the air temperature, but that's subcomponents like the refrigeration equipment, doors. We can monitor their tariffs to help them better manage their energy spend. And then we can integrate with any of the other kind of warehouse management systems or optimization systems that they want to use. So a lot of the operators are looking for a more holistic and integrated solution. And the fact that so many things are going digital allows us to integrate better and produce a better outcome. And in particular, that works with things like renewables, because everyone's anxious to find better ways to utilize renewables.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. I think you have a lot of good points there. And it's great to hear that it sounds like because of the digitization, you guys have a lot of flexibility with what you do. So you also mentioned in there earlier about, generating, I guess, the energy that you need to fulfill whatever the demand is and the capacity of your operation. But you also talked about being able to turn it into a profit center as well. So talk to me a little bit about that. And I guess talk to me too about, you guys are focused on thermal energy. So how does that differ from maybe some of the other options that might be out there in the industry?
Yeah, really good question, Kevin. So that goes down a couple of tracks. We do store thermal energy, inside of the facility. That's one of our, technologies. So when we digitize, we put in a thermal energy storage asset that's made out of phase change material. Mm. And what we can do with that then is because the refrigeration facility is already managing temperature, particularly in the low temperature environment, and they're already storing energy inside of the facility, we can do it more efficiently and we can do it more holistically. So it allows them to come in and out of the energy market where they are and buy energy and not use energy whenever they need to, which essentially turns the facility into a virtual power plant. So if you think about warehouses distributed all over the United States, all storing many, many, many megawatts of energy, you can see how those can be capacitors to the grid. So, for instance, one of our facilities in Northern California in the Bay Area, he gets those peak demands, for 13 hours a day. So we allow him to ramp down his equipment, which allows him to avoid the peak demands, but also that allows the local utility, PG&E, to use that energy for other people at that time. And it allows also PG&E to better manage their electrical stack and potentially use like more renewables and store energy at other times of the day. So you obviously know how complicated the grid is. Right. There are obviously other storage mediums out there. Lithium ion is probably the most well-known that everyone thinks about. And although a lithium ion battery takes in electricity and puts out, electrons, our particular energy storage takes in BTUs and puts off BTUs, which is exactly what our clients are looking for. So because we are actually working in the thermal space, we're 100% energy efficient, and we cost about 1/20th of the amount of a lithium ion battery. And also because our main ingredient is phase change material, which is hydrated salt, it means we're also very green. There are no rare earth metals and no sensitive or potentially toxic materials in our storage medium. So it's a really interesting new world. There's lots of different storage technologies that are out there. So when you're talking about food storage, there's actually energy storage going on in that facility 24/7, 365 days of the year And our digitization of that facility allows them to better manage their energy spend.
Interesting. Yeah. I think it's really sounds like the technology is developing. It sounds like you guys have a really good hold on it. It's something that it sounds like there's a lot of opportunity and advantages to using it for operations. And like you said, the ability to be able to manage your energy a little more, like the example you gave where they're able to kind of ramp down a little bit depending on when they need the energy versus when they don't necessarily need the energy is a really good thing, not only just for the operation itself, but it sounds like for, the general population as well, and the environment. So talk to us a little bit about, like a successful implementation of your technology and, what does that look like? Like, is success based on a better sustainability? Obviously, I'm sure there's cost savings involved because everybody measures success with cost savings. But what other factors were there for like maybe a specific case example where the technology was implemented?
Certainly. Well, we put in our intelligent controls, which is the digitization of it, and then we put in our storage medium, and we can do that in facilities as small as a walk-in freezer behind, say, a fast food restaurant, up to refrigerated warehouses into the massive distribution centers for the big retailers and things like that. So we've installed inside facilities that are both in food manufacturing and third-party logistics, food service. Again, mentioned the retailers, and that's across the U.S., Mexico, and the Caribbean and Australia. Specifically, we have facilities that specialize in things like ice cream, which is a very sensitive and high-touch food, and one that's very, very difficult to store well. So we help with things like that. And we combine with solar in various areas. So a specific example of that might be we installed a system in the San Diego Food Bank along with SDG&E to match with a solar system that was put in there. And we essentially took a refrigerated warehouse and took it off the grid. So there's kind of back to your profit center area. We eliminated the cost of their refrigerated warehousing and cold storage by combining it with solar. So during the day, the system works off the sun and creates energy there. We store the energy, and at night, it runs off of our system. And that was an industry first. And what that allows you to do, obviously, is the combination of renewables and storage, or any energy form and storage, is to move in and out of the market, as we said. And the average efficiency we give is kind of 25% of just straight efficiency. But when you have that efficiency, makes even more difference because there are obviously demand times, time of use, and different charges, peak rates, partial peak rates. All those things combine in a warehouse environment, particularly as energy intensive as cold storage warehousing, to be the second highest cost. In fact, cold storage spends over $40 billion a year in the U.S. on electricity.
I want to take a quick break to tell you about Variable and the new solution for on-demand labor. With demand always changing, why is your headcount always staying the same? If you're bottlenecked and overpaying for labor, your business can't keep up, much less scale. You can change that starting right now with Variable's on-demand labor platform. Post your work today and have bids from workers within hours. You'll be breezing through your backlog in no time with the help of the performance-rated workers you select. There's no volume commitments or term agreements, and you pay only for what you use. Post your first opportunity today at variableops.com/thenewwarehouse. That's VERYABLEOPS.com/thenewwarehouse. Now back to the show. That's a pretty staggering number. So obviously reducing that spend is, it's not only beneficial, I guess, on the bottom line, but it's beneficial from a sustainability standpoint as well. And I love the example you said. There's an industry first of the hybrid between the solar and then your storage system as well. I mean, it sounds like a really, really good option and certainly viable. We have obviously the sun's energy that we want to harness, and solar is expanding widely as well. So really, really interesting stuff. And I'm curious, as customers, and you mentioned earlier in the show that a lot of people, almost everybody in the industry, you said, is now building new cold storage because of the increased demand. As they're building these new cold storages, or as they're reworking their existing properties and footprints, what are some key drivers for the clients as they've decided to adopt your technology?
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
It's a great question, Kevin. The overwhelming market pull that we're getting from the new build, who are all striving to build the most energy efficient, resilient, and sustainable facilities they can, has been really, really clear. Some examples recently that you could look up, or your listeners could look up, is we installed in a facility called Isla Frio, or we're actually building that currently, in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, as you know, has had a number of challenges. Obviously, the pandemic there, the Hurricane Maria, which we were kind of instrumental in helping them maintain the food supply on the island, because we work with most of the distributors and food companies there. And when this new build was going in, they, between the USDA and the FDA and some other groups, came and were looking for the best technology to be efficient and to be resilient, given the hurricane challenges and the grid challenges there. Of course, our name came to the table. And why wouldn't you build any new facility with over 25% efficiency built into it and the resiliency right from the beginning? And the cost of that installation is roughly half of what it would be in a retrofit. It's kind of pennies on the dollar to install and get the efficiency from the day one. And in that particular facility, which is a big warehouse, we predict we're going to save them hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in terms of electricity.
Wow, that's a pretty good reason, I would say. That's really amazing. I mean, I was, as I said earlier, I'm not familiar necessarily with this industry and utilizing cold storage, but it sounds like you guys are really, really making a huge impact into, the industry, but not just the industry itself, but, I guess humanity overall, as you're kind of reducing the amount of energy that's consumed, and which, results in a lot of other byproducts that are not necessarily the best for our environment. So it's really, really great what you guys are doing. And I think that, it's going to continue to expand. I mean, some of the numbers that you're throwing out here in terms of savings overall, I mean, I can't see why new facilities going forward would not be harnessing this technology and being able to utilize it to make their operation more efficient and smarter overall as well. So I'm curious, before we wrap up here, what do you see as future trends for digitization and efficiency? And, obviously some things have sped up, as I've talked to many people throughout the pandemic in terms of technology. A lot of companies have seen where, their 5-year plan has become their 2020 plan basically, and now they're ahead of where they thought they would be because the pandemic pushed them in that direction to be able to survive. So what kind of trends in digitization efficiency do you think are happening in the near future, and maybe are already in place that we may have not seen without the pandemic pushing it towards that?
Well, the focus on the cold chain, particularly the low temperature cold chain with the vaccines, I think has made a lot of people aware of an industry that kind of worked in the background. I mean, a lot of people might think about there's a farm out there and somehow or another those vegetables and fruits need to get to our table. But probably not as many people are focused on the fact that tuna came from Japan, and, that steak came from Omaha, and, some of the things that we take for granted end up on our tables every single night come through the frozen food chain in particular, but also the refrigerated. So that demand, particularly during the pandemic, has only increased. And I think people have looked at the mix of foods and how they're consuming them in a whole different way. How that specifically comes to future trends, if we were to rub our crystal balls, which you're asking me to do, is what seems to be great for an individual facility and is, think about how powerful that's going to be across a portfolio of facilities. With all the distributed energy resources that are coming to the table, distributed wind, solar, batteries, combined heat and power, hydro, the grid's going to be increasingly strained. And our technology just plays one small part in helping manage the grid better and allowing us to reduce our energy intensity at the exact same time. So what we've seen is that more visibility, more automation of processes, better decision making because people have access to that data through digitalization. And then, this allows owners and operators to make better decisions on their energies and the grid to make better decisions and us to shift our use of power away from, say, old, maybe more carbon intensive ways of producing energy into newer, renewable, cleaner ones. Because we can manage the energy load better. Given how intense this load is on the grid, it makes sense that it needs to be managed like anything else. So our technology, along with others, for managing energy demand and at the same time preserving the quality inside of these facilities, are really going to be at the forefront of that. And obviously, the COVID vaccines have been something that's really drawn people's attention to it, which has been great for us. We're seeing demand, across the board now.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I think you have some good points there. And I love that you said, the COVID vaccine has drawn attention to this, and I think just the pandemic in general has just brought so much attention to the supply chain as a thing that's actually talked about in the regular world, and not just for the supply chain nerds. But it's really interesting to see how all these technologies and these things that we've been dealing with in supply chain have really come into play and become so necessary to make it through whatever you want to call this hard time that we've all gone through collectively as a globe, right? And it's really, really cool to see. And I'm happy to be talking to you and learning about this technology that you guys are able to harness and help with those types of things as well, and really help be more efficient and sustainable in providing food to people to survive, essentially. So it's really great work that you guys are doing, and I can't wait to see how the technology develops in the future, and how much more it gets adopted, and how much our industry is able to benefit from it. So James, I want to thank you for coming on the show and talking to me and educating me too about this, because like I said, I was not so aware about this technology and just cold storage in general. So now I'm very interested. So thank you very much. And how can people find out more information about Viking Cold Solutions?
It's really easy, Kevin. Obviously, we have a great website at vikingcold.com. And of course, there's examples of our technology kind of coast to coast now. But we're just happy to be doing our small part in conjunction with a lot of other great technologies out there that are making the world more sustainable and helping preserve the environment while feeding people.
That's great. Thank you so much, James, for coming on the show and spending some time with us.
My pleasure, Kevin. Have a great day.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.